Hello and welcome to Nutrition and Alternative Medicine. I'm JJ Flazanes, your host, and thank you for downloading today's episode. Today's episode is a special one because I got to interview the founder and creator of a product and a company that I use and actually love. I heard her on one of my friend's shows and said I need to interview her because I want to share this product with other people and tell you why it's so good and why you might be interested in using it. Before we get to the interview, though, I do want to remind you that you can grab your free copy of The Invisible Fitness Formula, 5 Secrets to Release Weight and End Body Shame, my latest book. Again, The Invisible Fitness Formula, 5 Secrets to Release Weight and End Body Shame at jjflazanes.com/book. Super easy, jjflazanes.com/book. Get your free copy. And we're going to talk about all kinds of things. Obviously, the 5 secrets to release weight and end body shame. And one of them in there is digestion. And that's a topic that comes up on today's show with Andress. Before we get into the interview, I do want to report, because at the end of the show, we talk about some of the new products that Swerve has out, which are baking mixes. So there's a chocolate chip cookie mix, there's a chocolate cake, there's a vanilla cake, and a carrot cake. And one of the problems with these natural or unnatural, depending if you're still using, which I hope you're not, the pink, the blue, or the yellow packets, that it changes the taste of your food, obviously because of the kind of sugar that it is and then the chemicals that are in it, or the lack of chemicals if you're using something more natural. But baking tends to be kind of hard. And so you're looking at, how do I get this to taste as close to the regular normal thing with sugar in it? And Andress and her team sent over a box for me to play with. And I will report I've made 2 of the things in the box, which are the chocolate chip cookies and the vanilla cake mix, because Doug said he didn't care about vanilla cake. So I wanted to make sure that I did something while he was gone that I would enjoy and he wouldn't miss. So the only thing I have to say, and if you don't follow me on Instagram, come on over to Instagram, because I always make note and I post things and I post pictures of when I bake these things, and the pictures of the cartons and the boxes and the nutritional labels sometimes are there. But I will say that I did the chocolate chip cookies with a darker vanilla. That would be my only mistake. I would recommend that if you make the chocolate chip cookies, try to use a clear vanilla so they look more like chocolate chip cookies. They look like chocolate chip cookies because of my dark vanilla, but they are fabulous and they taste amazing. And the vanilla cake also. When they are room temperature or slightly warm, you cannot tell the difference. Now, when sugar alcohol gets cold, or when you drink something cold after having sugar alcohol, sometimes there is a bit of a minty taste. Because it's an alcohol, right? That the alcohol part of it does have a little bit of a minty flavor. So it's not that the products taste like mint. They don't. But when they're room temperature and warm, you cannot tell the difference between a regular chocolate chip cookie or vanilla cupcake to these. So they're fabulous and I highly approve. With that said, let's introduce you to Andress Blackwell. As one of the founders of Swerve Sweetener, Andress is currently the president and CEO and oversees the vision and strategy for this zero-calorie natural sugar replacement. With an early career in radio, Andress is a former top-rated morning show personality. She currently resides in New Orleans and can often be seen on weekends competing in Stockdog Trials with her crew of Border Collies and Australian Shepherds. Welcome to the show, Andress.
JJ, so happy to be here. Thanks so much for having us.
I'm excited about today's conversation because you are the creator of a product that I love and that I use. And this show is going to talk about the product, which is Swerve. It's the ultimate sugar replacement. And it really is the ultimate sugar replacement. In fact, I gave it to clients as Christmas gifts because when I looked at what am I going to provide people, in the past, I'd given some wine, or one time I gave like a veggie slicer for pasta, making pasta out of zucchini. But when I really thought about this year, and I thought, my job as their trainer, as their health consultant and life coach, is to really give them exposure to products that can make a difference in their lives. And what's the one product that we all want to replace in a healthy, good tasting way? And it's sugar. So when I saw that you were being featured on different podcasts, friends of mine who are hosts, I said, okay, I got to have her on my show. because we have covered sugar on this show several times. The first one was called The Truth About Sugar. Jeannie Peters and I went over, that sort of some of the myths about sugar. People really think that when they think sugar, think of just the white, sweet sugar. They don't actually think of carbohydrates. And then I republished that show again, called Holiday and Sugar Balancing, because we're looking at how to go into the holidays in a smart way that didn't feel restrictive and that could allow you the freedoms of the holidays as well as ways to do it in a better way. And so it's out there. So I'm not going to talk about sugar in that way today with Andress, even though she is an expert in sugar, because I already have it on this show. So I'm going to spend the time with her today talking about specifically Swerve and or the sugar substitute that's used in Swerve, which is erythritol. Yes?
Erythritol, you said it exactly.
Let's talk about erythritol first before we get into your backstory, because I just want to, for anyone who's listening right away, there's been a lot of talk about chemicals versus natural sweeteners. And some people don't like stevia, which I understand there's an aftertaste, and xylitol still has calories. It's just less, and it's a little lower glycemic, but it's a sugar alcohol, which also erythritol is. So let's talk about sugar alcohols. Explain to everyone listening the differences and why it is calorie free, but it's not carbohydrate free. So let's talk about, why you chose to use that versus others, what the benefits. I heard some really shocking things about xylitol, as you were telling a friend of mine on her show. So go ahead.
Well, sugar alcohols are one of these groups of sweeteners that are kind of all of them get lumped into one category. And you'll hear people say, oh, that's, a tol, a T-O-L. If it ends in T-O-L, maybe I want to stay away from it, or I've heard some not so good things about it. And so you have the xylitol, the maltitol, sorbitol, lactitol. There's a whole plethora of them, including erythritol. And so most of those sugar alcohols, well, let me say this, all of them, with the exception of erythritol, have a very low digestive tolerance. And so what happens is they get into your colon and they can't permeate the intestines, and they start to ferment. And then we know that causes all kinds of negative and ill effects. And so again, having that laxative effect, which can be pretty terrible if you're out in public and all of a sudden you've eaten maybe a protein bar that has xylitol or maltitol in it. Also, as you mentioned, there are calories in the sugar alcohols. And so when people are calculating their net carbohydrates, and I'm sure we'll talk about carbohydrates and what that means to people these days and why we're starting to really understand them, but you can only subtract out half of those. So there is some impact to your blood sugar. Lower glycemic response, but there is some impact. There's erythritol on this other side of the spectrum of the other sugar alcohols. And it's so unique in the fact that it actually is 0 calorie. So it doesn't impact your blood glucose at all. You don't derive any energy from erythritol when you're metabolizing it. And then you have the taste, the clean, sweet taste that comes along with erythritol, and a much higher digestive tolerance. So that's one area, if you're using it in desserts and sweets and things like that, things like a lot of these better for you ice creams that have hit the market and some different beverages, we're going to eat more of that ice cream than we probably should because it tastes so good. And so by having erythritol often as the sweetener in there now, you're able to not have those ill effects again. And so really an amazing ingredient. The main reason that people haven't used it in the past, JJ, is because of the cost. It's not an inexpensive product. And fortunately, I've been able to see over the years, when we first started selling Swerve many years ago, a pound of Swerve cost $13.99. And so we've been able to really, by, obviously building our company and having better volume, but also the erythritol market expanding, we've been able to get better prices. And that's what's allowed it to go into more items and not, and people can afford to buy those items, so to speak. So that's a real big difference in what's happened over the years with erythritol.
Okay, now it sounds, because it's an alcohol, it sounds like a chemical for those, like where is it derived from? How do we create it?
Yeah, so different than all the other sugar alcohols, which are, in essence, they're produced through a hydrogenation process. Now, let me be clear. It's not hydrogenation like hydrogenating fats, but it's not a very clean process. Erythritol is produced by fermenting glucose. So what you do is you start with this glucose syrup, you add in microorganisms. Those microorganisms actually digest that erythritol or digest that glucose rather, and they create the erythritol. So it's a 3-day fermentation for those digestive enzymes to do their work and that fermentation to occur. And then voila, you have the erythritol. So no chemicals or solvents used during that process. That's what's really unique about it as well, is that clean process of how it's made.
Do you make your own?
We don't. We use manufacturing partners that are located in North America and also in Europe, and we're very particular about where we source our erythritol. There are quite a few suppliers in other parts of the world that we've chosen to not work with, and again, really making sure that we're sourcing from high quality suppliers.
It just gave me the visual because for those who might have listened to a lot of the nutrition podcasts that I've done, basically what you're talking about is there's probiotics, right? The probiotics, a probiotic fermentation that's happening, right? So it's just a breakdown. Went to the Jack Daniels
Distillery?
Yep, distillery, and
Uh-huh.
it just like I just had that visualization of
That's the perfect visualization because when you're making erythritol, they are in these huge brewing vats. So it looks just like if a lot of people have seen these big craft brewery, you could go on site to a restaurant and they're brewing beer right there in that restaurant and you see these big vats. That's exactly what it looks like when you walk into an erythritol manufacturing facility. I've been to there's one here in the United States, out in Nebraska, and then there's also one in France, and I've been to both of those facilities, and identical when it comes to that. You could also, if people have ever toured a kombucha facility, we have a place that makes kombucha right down the street from us here in New Orleans from our office, and we've done events there, and it looks just like they could be making erythritol in their plant as well.
Wow. Well, it was a very, as you were describing the process, it's exactly what I envisioned because I
You're spot
remember.
on.
Well, good. Which also made me wonder if it can be made. And I'm not suggesting that people take the time, trust me. And I love kombucha and I've made it, but literally I work with so many great companies. They sponsor my events and I like Revive is one of them and Synergy. And why bother? like to do it well and to do it right and to get a good enough yield. I mean, it's a process, it's a dedication, and I'd rather garden and eat my vegetables and go buy.
Well, I think you absolutely could. The challenge would be drying it and sieving it to make it into that crystallized format. So, right, you have this broth when you end up, after you've had that fermentation, and then it has to go through that drying process. So that's the part where it starts getting probably a little harder to do that at home. But I'm sure you certainly could do it yourself.
Well, there's no reason to because you really have created a superior product. I've had all three versions that I believe exist, the granular, the powdered, and the brown. And while I have not used it because it isn't cheap in like a 1-to-1 baking ratio, only because this past year for the holidays, I actually baked like a fraction of what I normally bake. So I'm looking forward to in the future, if I should bake that much again, that I will go, toe to toe with sugar replacements. But I also, when I make food for people, it's gluten-free, it's dairy-free, it's usually organic, all the ingredients, and it's high quality stuff. And I've used Swerve, and I only really want to feed people who appreciate it because I am going, to the nth degree to make like the healthiest products possible for them that taste amazing. And if you don't really care and you're the person who, eats as much sugar as you want, then I don't want to serve you this very expensive, very well crafted delicacy that I've put so much time, love, and energy into. So when it comes to, especially the powdered sugar, it's amazing. I mean,
you're going to have to start asking people, are you swerve worthy?
Well, I already know if they're swerve worthy based on how they currently eat. I mean, it's hard enough for me. My partner's mother came to visit, and they drove across country, and I'd made a meal, and I'd heard you talk about diabetes on another podcast, and we've talked about diabetes a little bit here, so I don't know that we need to go into that. But the gentleman, my boyfriend's mother's new boyfriend, she's 85, he's 86, and we were having dinner, and I asked them to come to dinner at my house. I said, come over. I make you dinner tomorrow. And I said, what would you like for dessert? And he said, oh, no, I don't eat dessert because I'm diabetic. And of course I watched him eat pasta and bread at dinner. And I sort of said to him, you do realize that pasta turns to sugar and bread turns to sugar, and this is all still sugar. And he said, I know, I try not to eat too many sweets. I said, great. What if I make you a dessert that has no sugar in it, other than the sugars, like natural sugars? So I actually ended up making a paleo apple crisp with no added sugar, just the sugar that was in. I think I might have used some Swerve in the almond meal, coconut meal crust that I did with the good fats and the apples and the cinnamon. So there are times where I will bust it out for people, but they don't know the difference. And when they finally go, oh, I can eat that and it doesn't spike my blood sugar, and it stays within sort of my quote unquote diet from my doctor, even though of course the doctors forgot to mention that carbohydrates turn to sugar, like all of them, right? I just love sort of the replacement of how it tastes. I mean, my favorite product of yours by far is the powdered sugar, because I've been doing a keto diet, not 100%, but I did 10 days of 100% keto, which was amazing. And then now I'm on this, like trying to figure out how to live it like part-time, like maybe like a Monday through Thursday, but all the sweets, all of the fun things that used and congratulations, by the way, of getting your product in all those books, because I'm sure that has helped business tremendously. Yes.
Oh, absolutely. We're so fortunate to have so many partners who have been with us for quite a long time. And most of these people, JJ, we've been working with, for almost 7 years now. And so before there was keto and we were talking about low carb baking and cooking, and we've been very fortunate to have some really great friends who have gone on to do some really big things, and they haven't forgotten about little old Swerve over here, which we're greatly appreciative of.
Well, when you have a product, and I know that it must be hard, and I want to talk about that a little bit, because right now, besides the fact that I'm basically telling everybody to go out and buy Swerve, and I am, because while I want all of you to cut down on your carbohydrates, all of them, I don't want you to suffer. And part of the reason why people have an issue making a lifestyle change when it comes to food is because they don't want to feel restricted. And the Swerve product, gives us a way to still get some of that sweet into our diet that tastes great and has less of a negative effect. So of course I want to promote it and I want to tell people about it, because it can be the game changer for people who've had a hard time cutting out sugar, so they say. And again, a lot of people are cutting out sugar, but they're still eating a ton of carbs. So they're not really getting to that level. But I'm telling you, if you can cut out the starchy carbohydrates, stick to your protein, your vegetables, and your fat, and then add in a dessert made mostly of Swerve, you will be a happy person who will have less cravings and probably release a little bit of weight and sleep better and feel better and have less brain fog. So besides, the pitch I'm doing right now pretty strong to my community on Swerve.
I think you're hired, by the way. This is great.
Well, when you find a product that works that you like, you want to share it. And it is, again, one of those game changers, because while I love stevia and I use it, there's an aftertaste, and it only really works with certain things, like things with higher fat. So like some kind of nut butters or things with chocolate, then you can disguise and the aftertaste isn't so pronounced. But even this morning in my bulletproof coffee, I added a little too much stevia and I had to go back and do it again. And I did it with the powdered Swerve, because there isn't an aftertaste. And when people again realize that there's something to help them transition into a healthier lifestyle that tastes great and they're not giving up anything. Does it cost a few more dollars? It does. But at the end of the day, your health is worth it. And what happens on the backside of all this abuse that we may be doing now, that goes away when you're living a healthier lifestyle. So,
well, and we say it all the time, pay now or pay later. And when you pay later, you pay in so many negative ways, right? So it's an investment in your health and your well-being and your vitality. That's the pay now concept.
Oh, absolutely. Now, with that said, because most entrepreneurs or people that create products have a story about how they got into doing this. So what is your story? Why this product?
Yeah, well, my story kind of involves a lot of ignorance very early on. I grew up in Alabama, a little small town called Ozark, Alabama. And we had, a Mexican restaurant, a Chinese restaurant, and some American restaurants. And that was it. I'd never been exposed to a lot of different types of foods. It was casseroles. We ate casseroles when I grew up, and so it was a very, very small when it came to the food scene. And I had never been in a health food store until I moved to New Orleans. My first career was in radio. And so when I moved to New Orleans, one of my first clients was a health food store. And I went in there and I looked around and I knew what nothing on the shelf was, JJ. I had no earthly idea. I couldn't pronounce the stuff. And I felt so just ignorant and naive. And then it makes you start wondering, well, who are the people putting this into their mouths, or why are they taking these things? And should I know about some of this kind of stuff? And so very early on, I started doing a protein shake. And the protein shake really was my gateway into understanding stabilizing blood sugar. And that if you can keep your blood sugar stabilized, boy, do you ever have great energy levels all the time. Weight management becomes something that is a little bit easier. You can think, you can function better. You're a better spouse. You're a better employee. You're all of these things that are just better because you feel better and you have consistent energy. And so it really, for me, was starting to understand blood sugar and how I was in control of that in my body. And that's how Swerve was born. It ended up, I left radio, went into business with the woman who was running the health food store, and we created a line of nutritional supplements. And Swerve was created to be the sweetener ultimately in the protein shake. It tasted so good, we said, gosh, we should be packaging this and selling it on its own. Now, that's many, many years ago, but to this day, I still talk about the fact that Swerve is a tool in the toolbox for blood sugar stabilization. And that's where we're committed to helping educate people around all the things that you can do to keep your blood sugar stabilized so that you have vitality, you have that vim and vigor and that zest for life. For me, that's really important and the cornerstone of everything we do.
And have you seen changes in your own health? Like, what would you say? Obviously, blood sugar stabilization, but what did that mean for you? Because this road of entrepreneurialism and definitely bringing a product to market is not an easy one. So there has to be a real dedication and resilience. What did you experience?
Well, for me, because a lot of times in the Fast and Furious radio career, I would skip meals, number one. And I didn't realize at that time what I was doing to my metabolism. I also would grab a soda, a sugar sweetened soda, and have that and maybe a pack of cheese crackers for lunch because I was hurry, go, 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 go. And so when I started understanding the dynamics of how, first of all, fats work in your body, protein works, of course, carbohydrates, as you just mentioned, converting to sugar, understanding how those food groups react in my body. The first things that I started noticing was once I started going, I call it being more carb conscious, right? So understanding the types of carbohydrates you want to have or don't want to have. Then I started seeing those energy levels improve, but I first started seeing it as I didn't have the cravings. And so I would say within a couple of weeks of even trying to change my diet, it was like, whoa, somebody would say, hey, would you like dessert tonight at dinner? And I'd say, no, I think I'm good. And then I would look back, the next day and think, I didn't even want the dessert. That's amazing. So I saw that those cravings really lessened. And then I started seeing the change in my weight. So I had a pretty drastic change. I never considered myself of thinking that I was dieting, but I became, I think, what my ideal weight was. So I lost about 20 pounds. I lost more sizes, like, going from, say, I think I was a size 10, 12 to around a size 4. And so it wasn't a ton of weight, but it was more my size because I was losing that body fat, right? So those were the things that I saw. What's been amazing is I go through periods of time of exercise and non-exercise. I've been in a non-exercise time for quite some time because of really growing this Swerve business and me being on the go and I'm able to control a lot with my food. Very fortunate that I have that willpower. I don't have as much willpower when it comes to exercise, but I have great willpower when it comes to food. And so from those earliest times of back in the early 2000s when I did change my diet, not much has changed since I really hit that I think would be my ideal weight. I don't get on a scale. I don't even own a scale, but I know that I can change things in my diet somewhat to really take care of how my clothes fit. And so that's the really cool thing about it is all these years later, I still use those same tools to get me to where I wanted to be back then.
Well, if you need some help with the exercise, I do
Oh,
training over Skype and Zoom. So you create products that help me. I can
yeah.
create products that help you.
You
So
know,
they're both needed.
I love it. I love it. I am very physically active. I walk around a lot. I live in downtown New Orleans, and I love being able to walk around, walk to the grocery store, and do all of those kind of things. But as far as a regimented exercise routine, I have been there. I wish that I was more dedicated to it, but I'm definitely physically active.
Well, that's good. Well, as we get a little older, you keep me in the front of your mind because we still need to build bone and build muscle and keep your metabolism high. And while diet can do most things, it can't do that. So that's where the exercise has to come into. For those of you who are listening, right? Like a lot of it is diet related. The good probably 70 to 80% of it. But when we want to build bone, build muscle, protect your joints, and
And
increase your
women
metabolism.
especially,
Oh,
right?
yeah, absolutely.
Women especially, as far as strength training, all of that, making sure that you do have the proper bone density. No doubt about that.
Yeah. Now, I want to talk about, since I have you here and I have been playing with a product that I would like to make, can you talk a little bit to those of us entrepreneurs in the audience about the process of getting this product to market in the way that you have?
We call it Harvard South down here in New Orleans because we couldn't pay to go out and get the education that we're getting every day by doing this. It's you can't really go to school and understand how to take a product to market, right? And all the things that are entailed in that. I can remember years ago needing to ship something on a pallet with a freight company, and I was like, "How do you do this? I have no earthly idea." And so you just start learning, and you start. Fortunately, we have the power of the internet at our fingertips now, where we didn't have all of that when we first started out. I mean, yes, we had the internet, but not all of the tools and not all of the information. And so it takes a lot of trial and error. One of the things that I would say is when you start to take a product to market and you have a concept, is making sure that you do it in a way that's small enough that you can make your mistakes small, because you're going to make mistakes. If you're not doing something, if you're not making mistakes, you're not doing something, right? So being able to know, okay, if I go out there, let me try this and let me see how this works. And then always trying to back up those promises that you make to your retail partners, or if you're taking a product and it's going into a brick and mortar store, how do you promote it? Those are the biggest things that you have to think about and really be able to deliver on the promises of moving that product off the shelf. Or even if it's e-commerce, if you were just going to take a product these days, it's so wonderful. You can try so many different things, and you have the power of Amazon and all of these other e-commerce e-tailers out there that can really help you try something and not have to spend all the money in going out to brick and mortar stores. So a lot of opportunity these days to really test those ideas. And that's what I highly encourage, is testing those ideas and really having that mantra of quality versus quantity. It's so important in every aspect of what Swerve is about. We are focused on quality versus quantity. So sometimes we're maybe a little slow to expand. You mentioned that you've tried the brown Swerve, which I'm so excited about that product, but it took us 2 years to create that product. And that's because it had to be exactly what it needed to be, just like brown sugar, but brown Swerve. And so again, we could have put something out there a lot earlier, but it wouldn't have been quite like brown sugar. And so we waited to make sure that we had that quality product. And that's hard sometimes because you have people coming at you, and we had people coming all the time. What about brown Swerve? Can you do it? What about, going into this big retail partner, and, you can do it. We want you in here, and us slowing down enough to say, wait, we have a plan. Let's take it slow. And that's my advice to anybody who's wanting to take a product to market or launch any kind of business, is really have a target and stay so dedicated to that target. And once you see success there, then start expanding out more and more. That's why some people say, what do you mean Swerve's been around? It's 17 years, actually. We're like the 17-year-old startup, but we have been slow. We've had to raise money. We've had to go out there and try to really, create, again, that quality and grow slowly so that we could always make good on the promises we were delivering to the consumers.
So at the same time you were creating this, fine tuning it, raising money, were there other products that you had created that were selling, or has this been a 17-year buildup for the last 7-year, really hitting the market?
There were the nutritional supplements, so the protein powders and all of that. And that stuff, my former business partner, I believe that she still does some of those things, but Swerve spun off to be its own own specific product and brand. And so we really stayed focused on that. And we had the granular and confectioners all of these years. Now, I would say we really started moving the needle and getting our stride and understanding who we were and what we needed to do, and probably around 2014. And so that's when we started seeing expansion nationally into brick and mortar stores, and then really starting to build the brand on a larger level. But we had not really anticipated the brown swerve and our new bake mixes. I'm not sure if you're familiar with our 4 new bake mixes, but we had not planned on all of those coming to market at once, but they all came to market at once in August of last year. And so that was quite overwhelming to go from 2 products to then having 7 individual products. That's a big difference in your product offering, but also a wonderful thing, because the bake mixes are grain-free, gluten-free, sweetened with Swerve, no added sugar, and super duper tasty.
No, I heard about them, but I haven't seen or tried any of them yet. And
I
so,
bet I could probably help you out with a little care package.
oh, I will definitely accept and appreciate that, and maybe do a little video on that and share it with people so they can see, and as well as maybe even share it with a few people. I actually just had an event here in Los Angeles called Releasing What Weighs You Down, and I actually cooked and baked for the whole thing. And
Wow, impressive.
yeah, well, when it came down to looking at catering and a vegan company that provided some food, the cost just got so out of hand. And I thought, you know what? Because I have a show. It's called the Easy Paleo Gluten and Dairy Free Cooking Show, and it's a video show and a podcast. And I introduce products on the show, and I teach people how to make things quickly and easily from scratch most of the time, and how it doesn't have to be as hard as you think it is. Everyone thinks cooking is so hard and time consuming, and I want to break it down and make it easier for them. In fact, I've had Layla Ali on the show twice, and we've taken things out of her cookbook that, well, the first one wasn't so the first one was a little bit more time consuming, but this next one that we're about to launch, which was her green smoothie, is super fast and easy. And I want to get people cooking more. I want people to have a better relationship with their food and with their food choices and their food source, and reading labels, and really even growing their own foods or herbs if they can, because we're getting so out of touch with food that this is another reason why I think we have food issues, is because we don't respect it. We don't understand it. We don't know what it does. We go on fad diets, and it never solves the problem of either not being present, not being mindful, not being in your body. So I love sharing these products. So I would be happy to bake and then share it on the show and talk about Swerve, because I actually am due for probably another production day full of cooking to
Well, and if you talked about it earlier, when you have your dinner at night, and then sometimes you just want a little something sweet. With our cake mixes, I like to make them into little miniature cupcakes. So I'm all about cupcakes. I think it's the little miniature ones are just the perfect portion, and easy to really satisfy if you have that craving. And so I'll make those, and just one is exactly what you need. One of those little chocolate cupcakes is always so perfect, but sometimes you don't have time, or maybe you don't have the almond flour and the coconut flour in your pantry. And those are really expensive ingredients. And so everything with the Swerve Sweets bake mixes, it's right there, the powdered ingredients, and all you have to do is add your wet ingredients, and voila, 25 minutes later, you have cake. And so super easy, and especially for moms on the go. Your kid comes home at night and says, I'm supposed to take some cupcakes to school tomorrow, and oh my gosh, then it could be a huge disaster that the kitchen becomes. But we make it a lot easier. We call it Keep It Simple, Sweetie, and so that's what these bake mixes allow people to do.
Well, I'm all about that. Birch Benders was a sponsor of my last event, and I'm all about the paleo pancakes. Now, could I figure out how to make them from scratch? Sure, but why would I want to? They've already figured out the perfect combination to make a paleo pancake. So here, just buy Birch Benders, and I'm sure it's going to be the same with you. Why we just buy the Swerve and already prepackaged, make it easy, and again, it's a healthy choice. And I love the idea of making them smaller, making the cake into cupcakes, because again, sometimes it's just that little bit of something that we want. And honestly, I'd rather eat my carbohydrates in things like that than to have the rices and the pastas and the crackers and the breads and the potatoes. I mean, most of us don't really enjoy those to the same degree we enjoy things that are chocolate or things that are
Right.
vanilla cake. So, and again, for
Exactly.
the occasional glass of wine, like I'd rather drink my carbohydrates than to eat them, honestly. So,
You and I are on the same page there.
yeah, no, it's like a give and take. It's not, and again, that's why I republished The Truth About Sugar on the show as Holiday and Sugar Balance, because I'm not about deprivation. I'm not about never eat this food again if you can't find a replacement for it that you love.
Life's too short.
Right. So it's a way, especially with Swerve, to eat sweets, to make them low carbohydrate. I mean, I love all the keto desserts. I was amazed at how many I made when I did the 10-day keto, and Jimmy's been on the show and he gave me a couple books, and I'm really enjoying playing around with these keto desserts that are gluten-free and grain-free and high fat and low carb, but we use Swerve to sweeten it, and it's perfect. It's so guilt-free, and it's still even good for you, good for your brain. So many wonderful things. So I'm hoping that everybody gets out there and go on Amazon for Swerve. You can find it here locally in California at Whole Foods and at Sprouts. I definitely bought it at both places. And where else are you in major stores across the country?
Yeah, almost all major stores, honestly. On the East Coast, Publix, Stop and Shop, Midwest, Meijer, Hy-Vee, Jewel, Osco. Of course, as you mentioned, Whole Foods, Sprouts, Fresh Time in the Midwest as well. Walmart, some Walmart stores, and expanding more into additional Walmart stores across the country. And so, yeah, you'd be hard pressed and especially in the next 6 months, I think you'll start seeing Swerve in even a lot more places, but lots of distribution. And there in California, you guys have the benefit of a lot of grocery stores carrying our product.
Well, a lot of my listeners all over the world, and so that's where I want them to go to Amazon, because most of them complain when they see, like, I bought a keto creamer at Costco in preparation for my event, and then people in Australia were asking me, well, we get mad when we see you guys post stuff because we don't have that here. But most people can buy it on Amazon all over the world, right?
Amazon, but then also there are two great websites for international purchases, Vitacost.com and then also iHerb.com. And those two sites have very reasonable shipping price tags. It's really, you can buy up to a certain amount of weight, and that shipping is very affordable. And so that's where really the partners that I could recommend, both Vitacost and iHerb, great partners of ours. And they both have, I know at least iHerb, I had an email note today saying that they have all of the new items on iHerb. So that's going to open up our international customers to being able to get those products.
Excellent. Well, everyone check out iHerb.com and Vitacost.com. Is that correct?
That's it.
Okay, and then the link is swervesweet.com, Swerve Sweet, SWERVE, swervesweet.com for more information and recipes. I saw you had a bunch of keto recipes. I love the way that the site is put together and how you can help people utilize the product. Can people also buy the product on your website?
Not on our website, but there are links that take you to Amazon so you can see where to buy it. That you can, see exactly where it is on Amazon. But you said it, and JJ, we have a ton of recipes, but those recipes are from anywhere of someone who is full keto, who doesn't want any carbohydrates, and there are recipes that have zero net carbohydrates, to all the way over to just traditional recipes where we're just simply removing the sugar, because people are all on a different place in their journey to better eating, or trying to understand that they do want to be conscious about how much sugar they're consuming. So that's the really nice thing about the Swerve website, is there's a myriad of recipes. Some of those recipes are based on recipes that we've had in our lives that have been passed down. Ben, our director of sales and marketing, has a great recipe on there that were his Grandma Raymond's lemon butter cakes. Now, Grandma Raymond didn't use Swerve, and Grandma Raymond didn't use almond flour and coconut flour. She used, box cake mix and I believe some type of pudding mix, instant pudding mix. But we've taken those things and made them healthier and options for somebody who is, paleo or keto, that you can have a lemon butter cake. Imagine that. So lots of different things that may have a little story behind them for us, but we've taken them, and I guess, as you would say, we call it, we've swerved some of those recipes. So wonderful, wonderful recipes on the Swerve website. And all of those things are ones that we have made or some of our blogger partners have made. And so my job, my favorite job that I do is to be the chief taste tester. So I was tasting some chocolate chip cookies in the Swerve office this afternoon, trying to get that perfect chocolate chip cookie recipe.
And did you succeed?
I think that we have probably made, Ben is on a quest to make just the perfect chocolate chip cookie in every way possible that's gluten-free. And I think that he succeeded multiple times, but he thinks this one is it. It was pretty doggone good, I'll tell you that. But chocolate chip cookies are my weakness, and I think they're all good.
I'm with you on that. I've done a chocolate chip cookie bar that's actually paleo. It's not quite as crunchy, although I've done the crunchy gluten-free, because that's, where you're going to get your crunch from. If it's paleo, not going to be crunchy, but definitely the chocolate part's what gets me. So let us know if you package that up, because I'll be happy to share that.
I'm telling you, this one, he wants it a little crunchy on the outside, but ooey gooey in the center. So there are all these little nuances to this recipe. And yeah, I do not mind all the R&D. Okay, keep on. It's not quite there yet. Maybe you need to make another batch.
What a fun job. Andress, any last thoughts that you want to share with the audience that's listening about not just Swerve in general, but sugar replacements? And, most of my audience already knows that they should stay away from the blue, the pink, and the yellow packets, that we're not looking at chemicals. Oh, I know a question to ask you before we wrap up. Have there been any studies, long-term studies, on any of the negative effects of sugar alcohols like erythritol?
There have not. That's the thing about erythritol, is that there have been a lot of studies on that particular product, and a lot of things out there, scientific research where you understand how it's reacting in the body. And so the really neat thing is that we've been consuming erythritol in things like soy sauce and in certain fruits and vegetables that it naturally occurs in. So our body is used to it. It actually even occurs naturally in our own bodies, and can have antioxidant protective qualities. So that's the thing about erythritol, again, that's really neat. Now, sugar alcohols in general, the only real negatives are the fact, again, that you have that digestive issue, and then just paying attention to the fact that there is some glycemic index in the other sugar alcohols. One thing I think to point out is, for Swerve, we also add the prebiotic oligosaccharides. And a lot of people ask, oh, well, why are those in there? It's really to increase that functionality of erythritol. So on its own, it's not quite as sweet as sugar. It doesn't necessarily bake and cook just like sugar. It doesn't have that browning and caramelization. So what we've done is we've optimized that blend so that when it comes to the baking and cooking aspect, we really are the go-to. It's a cup for cup measurement like sugar. And in addition, it has the same weight and density as sugar, which is super important when you're making certain baked goods. With some other things, some of the high intensity sweeteners, when you're using just a few drops or just a little bit of the powder, you don't get that bulk and granularity that you need when you're making baked goods. So that's another real benefit. And like you said, you've seen the brown Swerve. It looks just like brown sugar, and you can pack it into a measuring cup just like you would pack brown sugar. So that's a key differentiator, again, between the Swerve product and just say like a straight erythritol. But honestly, JJ, if people like the taste of stevia, if they like the taste of monk fruit, those things can be used very successfully in your coffee and tea. You can use Swerve in your coffee and tea as well, but it's very challenging to bake and cook with stevia and monk fruit because you just don't know exactly how much to use. So again, that's a bit of the Swerve difference, but there's definitely a place for all of the natural sugar replacements in the market.
Absolutely. And if I could use, again, I'm trying to find places for stevia, but I'm preferring Swerve in my coffee.
I love it.
Yeah.
Well, I like that you prefer it. It's I just like to see people trying to make a change, and whatever that change looks like. The fact that we can take some baby steps, and then we can say, gosh, I just want to be conscious. Conscious about carbohydrates and conscious about what I'm putting into my body. And so Swerve, again, is a tool in that toolbox, and you're not gonna find something that works any better than Swerve does, again, in that baking and cooking and having your yellow cakes have that beautiful Maillard reaction, which is that nice browning that happens on top. because we eat with our eyes too, right? So we want it to look like what we would bake and cook with sugar, that we want it to, the replacement, the Swerve, to look that same way. And so that's a huge advantage when it comes to Swerve too. So we can eat with our eyes first.
Absolutely. And I hope everyone listening tries it. And I honestly, if you're doing a keto diet, it is definitely recommended to use in a lot of the recipes, especially the powdered sugar. I have to say that's probably my favorite one. I mean, I love the granular and I definitely like the brown, but the powdered sugar, you really nailed it there. So I'm a big fan. Everyone give it a try and let me know. Let me know through the ways that you do, through Instagram or Facebook, or you find me on my website, but let me know what you think and would love to hear that you're using it more and more and reducing that insulin glucose response from carbohydrates. It's good for diabetics as well as everyone just trying to lose weight in general, but we want to get down those insulin levels. Andress, thank you so much for being here today.
JJ, it's been great. Thank you.